Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I'm your host and super CEO, Lindsay Liu.
Joining me today is Matthew Whitaker, the founder and CEO of Evernest. He founded the company in 2008, and today Evernest manages about 14,000 homes across the United States. He's also the host of the Evernest Property Management Show. So today we're going to turn the mic around, and we're going to turn the clock back to the founding story of his first ever property investment and the start of a storied career in real estate. Welcome, Matthew.
That's awesome. Thanks for the awesome intro, Lindsay. I don't know if it's a storied career yet. I hope to be able to say that one day, but appreciate the very kind intro.
Absolutely. We'll look back at all of this. It's being recorded, so you've got it for posterity.
Good. Well, it is exciting to get to be on the other side of the mic this time and answer some questions. So really excited to be here and love your podcast.
Thank you. So I know you said that there was the founding property, 1500 Cherry Ave. I'm sure it's a beautiful one. Do you want to kick things off and tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. And before I get started, I mean, this is, I always try to look for lessons in life. And I thought, as you were asking me about some of the stories of Evernest, and I thought, what better way to express what happened at Evernest than to get, the founding story of how Evernest got started, or even actually predates Evernest by about 5 or 6 years. Actually, how I got into the single family residential business. I'm only 44, but I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I'm just now starting to hit my stride, hopefully, and just learning how to get it done. So if you're brand new in it, hopefully some of these stories will be helpful. But when I was thinking about my story I was going to share, I have a favorite story about Walt Disney, and it's about the creation of Disneyland. And when he first opened Disneyland, they were rushing to get it open, and because they had set this date and everybody was going to show up, and they had all these issues trying to get everything completed before everybody was set to show up. And one of the things that happened was the plumbers union went on strike during this time leading up to the opening of Disneyland. And the plumbers union, basically what he had to do is he had to make a decision. Am I going to hook up all the toilets, or am I going to hook up all the water fountains? And of course, that's kind of an easy one, right? You want to hook up the toilets before you hook up the water fountains. And so he did. He hooked up all the toilets, but Disneyland opened without water fountains. And today we think of Disneyland and Disney World and all the different Disneys as these magical places that have everything figured out, and there's no pieces of trash, there's no gum anywhere. It's everybody's saying the right things and doing the right things. But what I remember about that is the fact that it opened without even water fountains. And he got accused of doing that on purpose, that he was going to sell more what we call in the South Cokes, but soda. But the truth is he just couldn't get the water fountains set up simply because he had to make a decision. And when I think about Disney today versus Disney World, Disneyland then, I think a lot about that as the creation, as entrepreneurs are listening to this when they're starting their own journey. I thought about my story when I got started. You were kind enough to share that we manage about 14,000 homes today, but literally my first home that I bought has an incredible story, and much like not hooking up all the water fountains at Disneyland, it tells the same message, right? Maybe you can get there even if you have a pretty slow start. And so my story is, it's 1500 Cherry Avenue. One of the great things about this 1500 Cherry Avenue is a guy named Spencer Sutton, who is my co-host on the Evernest Property Management Show podcast. He actually sold me this house. And when I got into the business, I didn't understand the business. I knew I wanted to be in the business. I knew I wanted to buy and sell houses. I actually told everybody I wanted to be a real estate investor and never a property manager or a real estate agent. And so I went to Spencer and I was like, I am going to buy this house from you for what you're going to charge me for it. But just please don't screw me. Like, this is my first one. And I got it, and he basically was offering it for $17,000, which today sounds like an unbelievable deal. And a lot of people listening to this probably can't even imagine that a house would sell for $17,000, but it was a legitimate house. Now, one of the funny things was when I was going over to look at it, Spencer would not go in the house, because it was flea infested. So I went in the house and got fleas all over me and essentially stripped down to my skivvies coming out of there just to get all the fleas and stick my clothes in the back of the truck. But it was just like, it was in terrible shape, but it was kind of like, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to do the best I can, and willing to take a $17,000 risk to see if I can flip this house and make money. So the story goes that on nights and weekends, because I had a day job, it wasn't a day job that I really enjoyed, but on nights and weekends, I would go over there and fix up the house. And I even got my 16, 17-year-old brother who was in high school to go with me, and used his truck too to haul stuff, and even wrecked his truck while we were getting it. And basically I was backing the trailer up, the trailer jackknifed, and it stuck into the side of the back of his truck. So like, you can just imagine things are going wrong. But again, like, I'm really excited about this idea. I knew I always wanted to own my own business. And now here I am able to do that in some small way. And it was an incredibly exciting time. But overcoming doing a lot of dumb stuff to get started. Finally get the house done. I get a call from an insurance company. I decided instead of trying to flip the house and make some money doing that, decided, I always knew I wanted passive income. So I decided, hey, I'm going to rent this thing. And at the time, everybody knows how that story ends. But at the time, you could refinance the house at the new kind of like value, and you could pull a lot of cash out. So I remember I was able to pull about $15,000 out, and I only made about $30,000 or $35,000 a year in my day job. So I basically pulled out 6 months of income. And that was the first time I said, well, I can start my own business. Like I can quit my job. I just bought myself 6 months with this cash, and I can go find another job one day. So I quit my job about that time. I found a resident, got a call from an insurance company. This person's house had burned down, and the insurance company was willing to pay rent for 6 months while they lived there. And it was at a higher rate, which was pretty exciting to me. And so we moved this resident in. Everything goes great for 6 months. Maybe there was a work order or two, but I can remember, and it's ironic because we're about to hit it right now. Labor Day, 2004 or 5, probably 2005. I'm down at the beach, and this guy's like, basically the 6 months has rolled out, and now it's the resident's turn to start paying the rent, and he's not paying. And this is my first rental house, right? And so I've got a resident in there that won't pay, and end up having to evict the resident. So a guy today that manages 14,000, and this may make everybody not want me to manage their house, but my first house, I wrecked a car, bought a house with fleas. I had to evict a resident. And so it was like a really tough start. But again, circling back to the Walt Disney story, when you think about it through the eyes of Walt Disney opening without water fountains, it's just amazing how 20 years later, how much better, just by hooking up one water fountain at a time, learning and growing and becoming a different person. As we've grown the organization, I've had to go from being great at renovating houses to being great at managing properties to being great at managing people, and then finally to being great at leading people. It just shows you, like, we're constantly learning. And I just think going back to the original story of how I got started, it's just a great testament of, it's not always perfect when you get started, and all the lights are not going to be green when you get started. But I think it's important for people to get started and just keep iterating and figuring out as they go.
I love that Disney story, by the way, because I feel like that is the perfect example of the day-to-day prioritization that entrepreneurs have to make, right? Pick one. Bathrooms
right.
or water fountains.
That's
and
right.
Sometimes the delta between those decisions is not as wide as that
That's
as
right.
well.
Gary Keller has a great thing. He has a book. It's called The One Thing. And when he thinks about his day, he's like, what one thing can I do such that by doing it, I make all things easier or unnecessary? And that's the way, as an entrepreneur, as a business builder, we have to be, right? Like, what is the one thing I need to accomplish today? And we actually require our team every morning to figure out what their one thing is. And I just
I
think
love that.
about, yeah, with almost 400 people, you can just imagine if they're all working on the highest priority item that has the biggest leverage, how far as an organization that'll take us.
So I'm going to make you rewind a little bit more. You said that you knew that you always wanted to be a real estate investor.
Yep.
What made you want to enter this segment of the industry in your early 20s?
Yeah. So first of all, when I was in high school, my dad, who was an attorney, my mom was a teacher. He handed me a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's shocking how many entrepreneurs have read this book. But when I read that book by Robert Kiyosaki, I first of all, regardless of what people think about him today, that is one of the greatest books of all time. It really explains kind of like pathways in life. And I decided at a very early age, I wanted to own my own business. How I got into single family residential investing, it was actually through a friend of mine. He took me to lunch. He said this guy who ended up being Spencer, my co-host on the show, there ended up being this guy named Spencer who had just quit his job to do full-time investing, that it was going so well. And so that got me really excited. And he was able to connect me with Spencer. And then that's how the two of us connected on that first house.
Amazing. And were you handy before you started working on this house? You said you were
No,
fixing it up yourself.
much to my wife's chagrin, I'm still not handy. Like, it's shocking to her that she married a property management guy that literally cannot fix anything. I was handy enough. It was very helpful to learn some of these things, but the truth is, as quickly as I could, I started paying people to do all the work.
That's how you became a manager. That
That's
was the
right. All,
transition.
all of a sudden, you start to learn really quickly what the gifts you have, and being handy is not a gift that I have. And when I think about our maintenance technicians now, I love to tell them, look, you're doing things that I can't do. So I appreciate the fact that you can go fix a toilet or fix an air conditioner really quickly, because that's a hard job, and but a very much a needed job.
And for the record, we all appreciate it. We should probably say it a little bit more.
We absolutely should. I think because they're not in the office with us, and they're out lonely riding around. We need to all pick up the phone and call some of our techs and tell them how awesome they are.
Awesome. One of the things that I feel like people always say is real estate is associated with passive income. It's really not so passive at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
I'm still waiting on that passive income. It feels very active right now.
Exactly. The thing that I will say, because I have my own investments as well, and that's how I got into this space as well, is the thing that I love about this asset class is that it is investment that you have the most control over. It's not like, oh, I have conviction in this company, I'm going to invest in it, right? In the public markets. It's like, no, I determine whether we're able to rent this effectively, whether we keep this tenant, right? And so obviously there are things out of your control, like a bad tenant. But it is something that you do have a lot of control over. And how has that kind of influenced the way that you've thought about building out the portfolio and helping your clients as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when you first get into this business, I've seen just exactly what you explained, is that a lot of investors got into the business because it is a way for them to control a portion of their investments, right? I see doctors and lawyers all the time that are, they fully invest in their 401k, but then they have extra capital left over. And then that's when they get into buying houses. And the thing they like about it is, unlike their 401k, to your point, I can drive by this house and see it, touch it, feel it, and have a lot more control over it. And what I would say is that definitely works up to a point. I mean, at some point, those people need to be willing to they scale their organization or their number of homes or maybe their multifamily buildings to a point where they need to be able to turn over large portions of that responsibility. And one of the challenges I've seen is that it becomes very hard for them to manage against a budget versus arguing over every little repair, right? And one of the great things that I've been able to have visibility in is some of the institutions and how they think about their real estate investments. And they're just managing to a repairs and maintenance budget. And so that's just a hard thing for the people that have, like me and you, who started small and kind of grew it, much like I had to change from being a great property manager to being a great people manager. They have to go from being a very active real estate investor to being more of a passive real estate investor and managing more like these institutions. And that's just a big step for people, candidly. And ultimately, if they can't learn to do that, then their investments have a lid to how big they can grow them, because you just don't have the ability to watch the whole thing as it gets bigger and bigger.
I mean, you need the right partners so that you're not micromanaging, right? That's the whole
That's
point.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
How do you advise? I'm assuming that at Evernest you do work with a number of first-time or small portfolio property owners. What would you advise to them as they're getting started?
Yeah, look, my first advice is a lot of people love to invest remotely these days. And I think it makes a lot of sense to invest remotely. In a day and age where technology is, you're able to kind of like dial in and see what's going on. You can go across the country and find out where the best deals are. You're not stuck on investing in your hometown. But one of the things while it's great that you can invest remotely, I do think you need to hop on a plane and come to wherever you're investing, because we have investors all the time that'll fly into Birmingham or Little Rock or Jackson, Mississippi, or Chattanooga, Nashville, Tennessee. And Evernest today is in 19 states and over 30 different markets. But they need to come and see it for themselves. And I think, whether you're investing with Evernest or somebody else, just meeting the team and making sure that you trust the team. There's just a lot of trust built that is hard to build over, digitally over Zoom or Google Meets or whatever. And my first advice is just go visit the team, go see the neighborhoods, go to see it, touch it, feel it.
And I think that's one of the reasons this is such a relationship business, is that trust, right? At the end of the day, something will go wrong. And
That's
so
right.
you need to know that you have the team on your side that's really going to make the right decisions for you.
Yeah. I mean, just like Walt Disney, even if you do hook up a water fountain, it's going to break and you need somebody to go out and fix it. And you've got to trust that that somebody has your best interest, that they're constantly thinking about how do we keep this resident longer, and how do we maximize the net operating income of the home. So, that's right. Building a team that has your best interests at heart.
As an entrepreneur, I'm assuming you have a very high pain threshold for difficult things. And so this first house, you kind of hit all the main ones.
Yeah, I got started early with the becoming callous to pain.
Would you do it all over again? Same house, or would you pick another one?
It's a great question. I would not trade. I do not want to go through it all again, but I would not trade going through it for anything. I went through the 2007, 2008 recession. That's how I got into managing houses for other people. After telling everybody, like I said earlier, I'm never going to be a real estate agent, never going to be a property manager. Now I'm both. I'm a real estate broker in 5 different states, and arguably one of the largest property managers in the country. But you're thankful for those types of situations, and going through the 2008 recession, you learn a lot of things. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about now is, it's hard to find good deals out there for retail investors. Institutions aren't currently buying right now. And the way we're thinking about that here at Evernest is, what are the seeds that we're sowing right now that ultimately will reap a harvest when things turn around? And so we're trying to be very disciplined to that. And, if I was sitting out there and I was a real estate investor, keeping the habit of looking for deals, keep making offers, being disciplined to the process will ultimately, maybe you pick up one or two good deals that you never would have picked up. And, in a normal world, you pick up 20, but those two may be exceptional deals that will ultimately reap a really big harvest. And so, one of my favorite leader mentors, I'm in Alabama, is a guy named Nick Saban who coached the University of Alabama. And he always talked about the process. And I think about the process. What is our process as an organization? How are we, basically buying into the things that we can control? Ultimately, we think the score will take care of itself if we can just be consistent with the things that we can control.
Yeah, put your head down. Keep doing the work.
Yeah, keep doing the work. Again, focus on whatever your highest return is that day. Finish it. We're in a time right now where you get less return than the effort you put in. Maybe you're starting a business and you feel that. Maybe the market's turned on you and you feel that. But there's also going to be a time, if you'll stick to it, that you'll do the same amount of work and get more than you deserve. And so usually that's way bigger than the inverse, which is the stuff that we aren't getting now, right? Like that could be a tenfold where it's hard to get much less than zero.
Absolutely. All right. Final question for you. Do you still have that house?
So ironically, I sold it, but just about 2 years ago.
Recently?
It was yes. I held it for a long time. It was very bittersweet. An institution actually came along and bought it from me.
Do you manage it now?
I don't think we do, but it's possible, but I don't think we do anymore.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
I am a frequent poster on LinkedIn. And so if anybody wants to connect with me on there, happy to connect. I do check the email messages from time to time, or my assistant does. And so happy to engage with people on there. So appreciate you having me on here. This has been really fun to relive some of the old war stories. And when you meet an entrepreneur, if you want to pull their string, all you have to do is tell them about ask them how they got started, and you'll generally have a good hour and a half conversation.
Exactly. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That is today's episode of If These Walls Could Talk. Super is the AI-powered communication and workflow tool for property managers. To learn more about Super, visit us at www.hiresuper.com. To share a story you have for a future episode, email us at hello@hiresuper.com.